What's up guys, it's Bliskin here, and I held a poll, I think a couple weeks ago, about what we should do to celebrate 1,000 plus subscribers, and you guys really wanted to hear my thoughts on how I would have made Metal Gear Solid 5. So I initially wanted to do a massive video where I just do the whole thing at once, but I don't think I'm physically capable of editing that much in one sitting, and it's just going to take me forever. So instead I'm going to break it up into 3 parts. Today we're going to be talking about the first part, which is going to be the core gameplay changes, map design, and a little bit about the sandbox. I'm not going to go too much into detail over how I would do the sandbox, as I made an entire 30-minute video talking about how I would do Metal Gear Solid 5 sandbox. So go watch that if you want to hear an in-depth description of the sandbox. I'll bring up sandbox elements probably during the discussion, but it's going to be more so throwaway lines or just giving you a general idea of how things would work, rather than going to the specific weapons of each category and specific vehicles and specific enemy types. So with that being said, let's get into the gameplay and world design.
With that, I introduce you to the fantastic world of gay sex.
So first, let's talk about the differences in how Snake would play, act, move, all that kind of stuff. I actually want to keep the majority of that the same. I like how Snake moves in the Phantom Pain, how he runs, how he aims, how he shoots, how he CQCs. It's really good. There's just a very few select kind of tweaks I want to make that I feel would have an overall enhancing effect on the gameplay. So first up, I do not like how in Phantom Pain combat is trivialized, because you can just tank 30 rounds from an LMG, hide behind a wall, and then just Wolverine your way out of there. No, this is a stealth game, and getting shot should have consequences. So what I would like to do is a streamlined manual healing system. Basically, you'll have healing items in your inventory, and if you take damage after a warning shot, after getting clipped once, after getting clipped twice, on the 3rd shot that hits you, you will take substantial damage and be injured. At this point, if you have the necessary items, you can hold triangle and Snake will play out an animation where he patches up his arm, fixes up his leg, cauterizes a wound on his torso, whatever it is. I want a variety of animations so we don't just get the same old spray can animation. I'm totally fine with streamlining the health system. We don't need something like in Snake Eater where you have to open up a menu and do all this kind of stuff, but I don't want it to be really simple, repetitive, or just lazy like the auto healing system. I want to add in a stamina bar, not so much in the sense that it limits how much Snake can run, but just doing CQC or taking damage or not eating will have an effect on how long your reflex mode will last. It will have an effect on how steady you can aim, and the only ways to regenerate this thing back up is to utilize the flora and fauna in the open world, or return to Mother Base in order to, rest Snake up, heal him, fix him up, get him back into tip-top condition.
Hamburger.
The last major overhaul I would do would be to the dialogue system. You know how in the game you can interrogate people, give commands, and that kind of stuff? I would like to expand the options that you have, not just with interrogations and commands, but I want you to be able to meet friendly NPCs and be able to engage in sort of conversations. Think of it like a modernized codec, where instead of, calling someone up and then hearing them talk for 5 minutes, you can walk up to someone and ask them about something, and then they'll give you an answer about it. It could be really codec-y conversations, or it could be just little affirmative or negative comments on whatever given subject is currently relevant in the gameplay at that moment. but an expanded dialogue system is going to be integral for the game I'm going to want to put together, and we'll talk about how and why as we start moving into the world and level design. I'm not a fan of how the open worlds turned out in Phantom Pain. I think Ground Zeroes got the wide open, non-linear base and surrounding area design down perfectly. Ground Zeroes is probably one of the best Metal Gear experiences. I will die on that hill, and I think if I was to make Phantom Pain, I would absolutely model each of the different worlds after Ground Zeroes. Since Ground Zeroes is supposed to be a tutorial level, I'll expand the worlds a little bit, but the basic structure I want to have is a massive base that you have to try to infiltrate, smaller outposts surrounding it, and then a type of wilderness area on the edges that you can start off in, scout, and do all the stuff within the core gameplay loop. The core gameplay loop, of course, being scouting with your scope, making your plan, infiltrating, and then exfiltrating. So have a space where you can do that on the outskirts, have little outposts that you can go after and attack to weaken the main base. So for example, there's a little bit of an outpost that controls all of these security cameras or supplies body armor. By taking out that outpost, you make that end goal main base easier to infiltrate. But getting a little bit more so into specifics, let's talk about the 3 different worlds I would want to add after Ground Zeroes, Camp Omega. The first one, of course, is going to be Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan, I really want to emphasize the ideas of distance and verticality. So basically, I would want it to be mountainous areas surrounding a base on a desert plateau. So basically, you would start off, or you would be dropped into very rocky mountainous areas very high above all the little outposts in the main base, which will make it very easy for you to scout all of these different places and make your plans since you have the higher ground. Now, while you're up there, you're going to be introduced to the different flora and fauna. So for example, you can have some sheep that go around the open world, and you can use them to hide from the enemy by hiding in between them as they go by, or scaring them in front of trucks to stop convoys. We'll have certain plants that you can pick up for healing items, certain plants for food. I also want you to be able to meet friendly Mujahideen fighters. So what I want from these guys is basically kind of support in the field. I don't want you to be able to open up the iDroid. I want you to have to work with these neutral NPCs to make them friendly towards you. So for example, if you meet them and you give them some of your supplies to help them out if they're hungry or if they're sick, if you rescue the men that the Soviets have taken away from them, they'll be more likely to give you ammunition and supplies to make your mission a lot easier. If you really take the time to improve relations with them, they'll even man the outposts on the outskirts of the main base that you take over. So you'll be able to have a direct impact on the world you're in the more you drop into it and the more you do things in it. In regards to combat, I want to incentivize long-range combat. LMGs, sniper rifles, rocket launchers, turrets, that kind of thing. I want you to engage the enemy from further away, 1, because you have the option to, and 2, because now that you can actually take now that you can't take a lot of damage, it's probably a better idea to fight guys who just have bare AKs from further away with scoped weaponry. Of course, when you're infiltrating the main base, you'll have to get a little bit closer. That main base will be a fusion between OKB-0 and the Afghan bases where they keep Sahelanthropus, and it'll be like a harder version of all those smaller little outposts. But yeah, that's generally how Afghanistan will work. I want to bring in the camouflage system, or at least outfits with unique benefits and traits. So I want the environment and the occupiers of said environment to also have a role in that. So for example, during the day it's going to be really hot, and at nighttime it's going to be really cold. So having an outfit with a scarf that you can find in the world will help keep Snake cool during the day by covering his head, and then warm at night by covering his neck. If you find the animals camo, you'll be able to have sheep that stick around with you and follow you around, so it becomes a lot easier to use them for stealth, stop convoys, and just, hide between a herd of like 30 sheep so the enemies have no idea where you are.
Hamburger.
It's that kind of level of interaction I want between the outfits you wear, the weapons you use, the enemies in the world, and the actual level design of the world. The second area is going to be the Congo. Now, I want this to be the opposite of Afghanistan. Whereas Afghanistan is going to be all mountains and wide open expanses, I want the Congo to be dense jungles and swamps. So again, you'll be dropped on the outskirts, which will be mostly thick jungle and, swampy territory. On the middle layer of the area, you'll have all these little outposts with the enemies, and again, a central base camp that will this time be like a mine or an oil refining facility. We'll talk more about why it's going to be an oil facility / mine when we go in the next video and talk about story, boss fights, and buddies. But for now, just picture polluting kind of plant, toxic areas in between the outposts, and then a jungle area that kind of serves as a refuge where this kind of industrial menace hasn't really touched yet. Instead of the Mujahideen, I want exploited workers that are living in these, villages nearby that you can give supplies to, rescue their workers, and incentivize them to occupy those outposts. Now, with both the Mujahideen and the workers in the Congo, I want them to want to stay in the world. So you can Fulton soldiers and you can Fulton certain people of interest that we'll talk in later videos, but with those neutral, friendly NPCs up in the world, if you bring them to your base, you're doing so against their will. The Mujahideen want to fight and free their country. These Congolese workers want to just be free of some industrial force forcing them to work. So you're basically putting these people into slavery if you Fulton them. So I want to add that kind of level of like not so white and black with the mechanics that you should do to play the game right or should not do to play the game wrong. So even something non-lethal like Fultoning can be bad in certain circumstances. Africa, I want the conditions to be more about rain and water, and you'll have camos that reflect that. In Afghanistan, you'll have the hot, the cold, and sandstorms and all that kind of stuff happening. In Africa, you'll have heavy rain. You'll have like thick pockets of mud that you can get camos for, where you can almost blend in perfectly. You'll get these toxic areas from the mine and oil refining plant, so you'll have to get special gear to protect yourself so you don't take damage when going into these areas. And this brings us to the last area /biome /world. It's going to be like a tundra in Siberia. This is going to be really small, much smaller than the Congo and Africa, probably more on the scale of Camp Omega, where it's just going to be a large base, a couple outposts, and then some basic cave systems within the ice to hide away from the enemy. This area here is not going to have any neutral NPCs and is going to act like an endgame hardcore area. So basically, even the enemies in the smaller outposts are going to have the best gear, the best armor, the best vehicles and trucks going about. Like the vehicles, trucks, and enemies there are going to be like that one like Humvee in Ground Zeroes, where when that thing starts moving around, you got to be really careful because all of a sudden getting an alert means getting that thing's attention. I want that sort of tension in the stealth in this final area. The main base in the tundra is going to be like a hardcore gauntlet of every stealth challenge you came up against. Gun ciphers, cameras, infrared traps, armored enemies. Everything that you've come up against is just going to be in your way, and you're going to have to go through like this linear gauntlet to get to the end goal of this mission, which we'll talk about more in the story section. The Sandbox, very quickly, is going to be basic level up for everything. So with your guns, you're going to start off with a dinky gun, go to something kind of competent, and then get like an end game awesome weapon. Same thing with vehicles, same thing with your enemies, and even the same thing with these worlds. Afghanistan will be easier than the Congo, and the Congo will be easier than the tundra. In regards to the weapons and the way you interact with the enemies, I basically want to avoid this. This is what Metal Gear looks like 95% of the time. I don't want you to go around with not even non-lethals, but just suppressed weapons, headshotting enemies as you move along. I want you to use the box. I want you to use the weird arms, the weird grenades. I want you to think out of the box. No pun intended. We'll have some non-lethal options here, but they'll be like shotguns and grenade launchers. And if we do have a suppressed tranq pistol, it'll be treated like a power weapon with super rare ammunition. So yeah, basically, like, I don't want to talk about the sandbox forever because believe me, I can, but the gist is I want to keep the player from just stopping popping. An assault rifle is going to be good because you get greater range and more attachments, not because it becomes quieter than the rest of them. I think Metal Gear is at its best when you're using the environment and the weird tools at your disposal to come out on top, and I just want the sandbox to reflect this. So no overpowered suppressed weapons and more weird shit. Out of the box shit. The kind of shit you need to take your time and think about and plan. That's what I want here. Of course, you could use weapons like the sniper rifle to shoot guys from far away and have them have a harder time hearing and finding you, but I don't want to give you just super suppressed assault rifle, pistol, all that kind of stuff. Maybe we'll throw in some suppressed SMGs because the suppressor wears down really fast and it has a lot of spread, so you really got to feather that trigger, but yeah, we're definitely going to take it easy on the suppressed variants of weapons. I want you to experiment, and I want the maps and the enemies to tie into that as well. But yeah, this has been the first episode of how I would make Metal Gear Solid 5. Again, trying to do this has been a crazy process. I've made scripts, I've gotten rid of scripts, I've tried to wing it, then I said no, I shouldn't wing it, so I just said, let me just chop it up into little bits. I hope that doesn't bother you guys too much. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've been Pliskin, and I'll see you guys on the next video.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.
Hamburger.